Hello and welcome to College Transfer 101. This video is an overview of some of the basics to consider when you're thinking about transferring. I'm hoping that the goal of this video is to give you some general information and give you a direction so you can start looking at the next steps on your transfer journey. I've got a lot to talk about, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So today I'm going to go over different types of degrees. Some information about different schools and programs, including how to weigh them against each other and make decisions. We'll talk about a typical transfer timeline, what you might see on a transfer application, things to do after you apply, and how to organize it all. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jenna Floyd, and I am the retention specialist for a program called TRIO Student Support Services. We are here at Wenatchee Valley College to serve 140 students with free services. So we offer academic support, transfer help, financial literacy, social events, and we also help with career building and miscellaneous other things. So our goal here is to help students get that extra support that they might need and want to do well here at Wenatchee Valley College, but to also continue on to a bachelor's program. So if you are unfamiliar with TRIO, I recommend checking out our website or getting to know us and seeing if you're eligible to join. I will have some contact information at the end, and we're always happy to answer questions. So let's start by talking about the different types of degrees out there. There's a lot of options, and it can get a little confusing. So here at Wenatchee Valley College, we offer three general types of degrees. There are certificate programs, associate degrees, and there are a few bachelor's degrees as well. So all three of these are considered undergraduate degrees. The thing with undergraduate degrees is you typically don't need one to get the others. There are some programs where that's not the case. Sometimes you do need a certificate to get an associate's. Sometimes you do need an associate to get a bachelor's. But typically speaking, you can just go into a bachelor program and you don't have to have the lower levels of this pyramid. But as you probably know, because you are here, there are lots of benefits to starting out with a certificate or associates. You get a chance to test things out and see how you like them and experience college. You get a little bit of time with a little bit less pressure to figure things out. And an associate's degree is essentially the first 2 years of a bachelor's program. So if you are here at Wenatchee Valley College, you're probably getting things a bit cheaper than you would be at a university. And again, it might be a little less pressure and smaller class sizes. So you're going to have to take these classes somewhere, the general requirements and basic first 2 years. You might as well do it in an environment that's welcoming and supportive. And that's why you're here, you know. But some people can just go on straight to get a bachelor's degree and do it that way. There are other degrees after you get a bachelor's degree if you want to continue your education or if you need to get into the career that you want. For example, if you want to be a licensed counselor or social worker, or a lawyer or a doctor, you will need to go on to graduate school, which means completing a master's or a doctorate. Just like with undergraduate degrees, you don't always have to get a master's first. Sometimes you do have to get a master's before a doctorate, but generally you can just, if you need a doctorate degree, you can go straight into that program. The key is that you have to have a bachelor's degree before you can go into a graduate program. So if you want to continue on and get a bachelor's, you want to go on and get a master's afterwards, that's great. But you do have to finish your bachelor's degree first. So the main reason I bring this up is because this terminology isn't always talked about a lot and can be a little confusing. So just because you graduated from high school, for example, doesn't mean that you can get into a graduate program. You actually would be looking for an undergraduate program. So as you're looking at transfer schools, you will probably see some of them offer graduate programs. So you'll see language for undergraduate and graduate. Make sure you're looking at the undergraduate programs if you're looking to go into a bachelor's degree. It'll save you a little bit of time and effort and some confusion. So when you start getting this all organized, it's never too early. If you have an idea in mind, it's a great idea to start exploring your options. And even if you don't have an idea, you can always look at different schools and different programs to see what options are available to you. If you know what major you want to go into or program, I highly recommend looking over the details for each school that you're looking at and seeing what classes you need to take to get into that program. Just because you have an associate's degree doesn't mean that you're prepared to get into that major. You have to make sure you take the right classes. Sometimes those overlap, sometimes you can just go right in, but sometimes you can't, and you need to take certain classes to get in first. So look at those prerequisites and take them while you're working on your associate's degree if you can, or at least be prepared so you know when you transfer what you need to take. I also recommend looking at lots of different colleges and universities. You don't have to make a huge list and get overwhelmed, but if you only have one school in mind, you're really limiting yourself. I'm not saying that your dream school isn't a good option for you, but look and see if you can find at least 3 different schools to consider. And one of the best ways to break this down is to come up with a school in one of 3 categories. Start with a safety school. What is a school that you're pretty confident you're going to get into? Then also look for a possible school. This might be one that you really want to get into and you have a good shot, but there's always a chance that you might not. And then look for a reach school. Even if you don't think you're going to get in, and maybe their GPA requirements are a bit high, come up with one anyway and apply if you can. There's lots of options. You never know what's going to happen. And if you apply, if you don't have to go if you're accepted, but if you are, you might be able to, weigh your options a bit more. So I highly recommend coming up with at least one school in each of these categories and applying to them if you are able to. One of the biggest things to think about is what is actually important to you. And this is going to be different for everybody. For some people, cost is number one. You don't want to take out loans. You don't have a lot of finances. Cost is going to be a big piece, and it's important to all of us. But don't let the price tag always throw you off. Sometimes cost can seem like a lot, especially if you look at like private schools, but they also offer a lot of scholarships and free money to supplement that. So don't let the price tag immediately, turn you off to it. But for some people, cost is definitely, a big factor to consider. Other things like, do they offer the program that you want? If a school doesn't offer your program, then there's not really a point in going there unless you have other options that you are considering. Do you care about student life? Sometimes that's important. And you need to know if you can live on campus, what's going on around campus. And it's important for some people to be part of a community. That can really make a big difference and get that college experience. For other people, it might not be as big of a deal. So weigh how important these things are to you. Think about class sizes. Are you okay with being in a large lecture hall with a couple hundred other students? If that's not such a huge deal to you, then you can think about some different schools than maybe a student who really feels like they need that really small environment. Overall, this is not an exhaustive list. You know what's important to you. I don't. But look at the different things and consider what matters and kind of evaluate what actually matters versus just kind of what you like. And hopefully this will help you make some decisions. And I want to caution you, are you limiting yourself? It can be valid to be afraid of leaving home or moving away from your family. And for some people, they can't. You just need to stay with your family. That's okay. But for some, maybe it's just you being a little nervous, and that's okay to feel that way, but don't let it hold you back. Think about where schools are located. Sometimes we don't want to move. But again, is that a limitation you're putting on yourself? Is that really valid? Sometimes it is, but think about the things that you are limiting yourself with and if they're really important. For example, a lot of people in this area will talk about how much they don't want to live in Seattle. And I get it. But, think about what a different town might be like. Just because you have a bad idea of what Seattle's like, or Spokane, or, the West Side, don't let that totally change your entire options available to you. Just because you think a town or city or area is a certain way doesn't mean it necessarily is. So spend a little time looking into it and don't let that hold you back. And again, assuming you can't afford it or you won't get in, don't let that limit you. You never know. There could be financial aid options, scholarships that you don't know about, and you don't know until you try. Maybe you can get in. It's worth applying. So think about all these different things, and also think about what you want versus what other people want for you. For some students, maybe their entire family went to a certain school, or their family really wants them to stay close to home. but maybe that's not what the student wants. So not that these things aren't important and not that family's not important, but think about what the limitations other people are putting out there and see if those things are holding you back and keeping you from what you actually want and need. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the different options here in Washington State. There are 6 public universities in our state: Central Washington University, Eastern Washington University, Washington State University, University of Washington, Western Washington University, and the Evergreen State College. All 6 of these schools are fully accredited and well respected. So if you plan to go to any of these, it's usually a pretty safe bet for the most part that you're going to get into a decent school that has a reputable degree. And these schools also have really good agreements with us too. So if you're working on an associate's degree, especially if it's part of the direct transfer agreement, there's a good chance your credits are going to be respected here as well. But there are also a whole lot of private schools in our state. This is just a very small group. So I highly recommend looking into these too. Like I was saying, look at some of those reach schools. They can have a high price tag. You might see a tuition fee of $50,000 and go, ugh. But they also offer a lot of scholarship options. So you never know. Sometimes most of that can be paid for by the college and you don't actually have to come up with that money. Look around, see what options are available and see if their experience calls to you more than maybe the public schools. There are 10 private schools in our state that are part of the independent colleges of Washington State. I couldn't fit all 10 here, but here's some of them. You can go look at this list through icwashington.org, Independent Colleges of Washington, and find a list of these 10 schools that are pretty well respected. They're all accredited. They're agreeing with us through their transfer agreements. They usually have a pretty good relationship. They're pretty solid schools for the most part. There are other private schools that aren't necessarily part of the independent colleges, and that might be fine. There are a lot out there that are also accredited and respected. But I think this is a really great place to start if you're looking at private school options and you can see, a bit more information about what each school has to offer. There are also online programs. So all 6 of our public universities have programs that are completely online. That doesn't mean all of their programs are available online. Some of them only have a few, but there are programs. There are certain majors that you can do completely online if that's something you're looking for. And some of the private schools have that as well. Many other state schools also offer online programs. So just because we live in Washington doesn't mean that you have to attend a Washington school online. You can attend a different one online. Some of them charge out-of-state tuition, so keep that in mind. If you don't live in that state, it can be more expensive, but sometimes they don't for an online program. So it's worth looking at if you have a school in mind. And there is an entirely online school that is well respected and accredited called Western Governors University. This university has a few different types of programs, I believe teaching, business, IT, things of that nature. The programs are designed a bit differently than kind of your standard school. So they're more self-paced. You pay tuition every 6 months and you take classes at your own pace. So if you can take them quickly, you can kind of power through for cheaper. And if you need more time, that's okay too. They do accept transfers in, but transferring out their credits can be a little challenging. So just something to consider if you're looking into WGU. And I keep talking about this thing called accreditation. Accreditation is a third party, so somebody independent of the school who determines if the school is meeting the standards of academic rigor, I'll say. So that means that someone's coming in and going, okay, does this English 101 class teach you what an English 101 class at college should teach you? This is really important that a school is accredited because that means that it's respected and people are understanding that it's teaching you what you should. A school that is not accredited can lead to problems down the road. So it might be hard to get a job with that degree if it's not coming from an accredited school. You might not be able to get in graduate school or transfer those credits. So make sure that your schools are accredited. All the schools I've talked about so far are, but I still recommend checking it out and looking to make sure. For the most part, we want to look for regional accreditation. Trade schools and some more specific programs might have national accreditation, and that's okay if that's what the program is, especially with healthcare, they can be a bit different. But if you are not interested in kind of a specific area, you'll want to look for regional accreditation. For schools that are in the Northwest, so Washington State and other states in the area, there's the Northwest Commission of Colleges and Universities. They have a list of all the schools that they've evaluated and whether they're accredited or not. There's a whole lot of options on there, so that's a great place to get started to see what universities and colleges are available. You can go to nwccu.org and learn more about the accreditation for each school, including Wenatchee Valley College. We're on that list. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to talk about a typical transfer timeline. Now, I put typical in quotes here because nobody fits into a perfect mold. Everybody's timeline is going to be different. You know, you don't have to transfer in the fall all the time. Take this at your own pace. But generally, a lot of students plan to transfer in at a fall quarter. And if they're doing so, this is kind of what I would call a typical timeline to look at. So if you are planning to transfer into a school starting in fall quarter, the fall before you transfer is where we're going to start focusing on things. So if you are planning to transfer next year, ideally fall of 2023, you want to start at a different school. This fall right now is when you should be focusing on these things on this list. For everybody, work on the FAFSA. Whether you are a new student, not new student, transferring, not transferring, complete the FAFSA. Even if you don't think you're going to get aid, just do it. You never know. And you might open up some opportunities to scholarships and other things that you don't get otherwise. When you're filling out the FAFSA, list any schools you might attend in the next year. So you can list up to 10, and there's no penalty for submitting a school on your FAFSA if you don't go there. So any schools you're thinking about applying to, I always recommend putting Wenatchee Valley College on there just in case you take an extra class or something next year. And then any schools you're applying to up to those 10. You can always make edits later, but FAFSA deadlines can kind of come up fast, and it's nice to just not have to worry about it if you don't, have to make edits. Also, start looking at your transfer application and know what to expect. Some of the applications open up around this time each year for the next school year. So you can actually look at a lot of these applications now or make an account. If not now, then probably soon, by December, I would say. Some applications require written statements or essays, so look and see if they do and what their prompts are so you can start working on them. Make an application account and see what the application requires. Reach out to advisors at those schools or people who help you with transferring, and that way you can get all your questions answered. If you need a letter of recommendation or a few, now's a good time to start asking for those. And if you are looking to submit these applications, you're probably going to have a fee associated with them. Most of them do charge a fee, but a lot of them also accept fee waiver forms if you're eligible. So for example, if you're in TRIO or CAMP or MESA, most of those programs have fee waivers that are accepted at most schools. There are different income requirements or other criteria, even if you're not in one of these programs. So look and see if you're eligible. And also know that if you submit a fee waiver, it doesn't have an impact on your application. So don't let that hold you back. They're not going to judge you or limit your financial aid or anything like that. Fee waiver forms are separate. Okay. In the winter quarter, before you plan to transfer, it's the time to apply. You can sometimes apply in fall quarter, but they are pretty much almost all due in winter quarter. And fill out that financial aid application, so the FAFSA, if you need to, if you haven't done it yet. And make sure you add any schools that you applied to or plan to apply to if you need to make revisions. A lot of schools also have scholarships that you can apply to. Sometimes they're included in your transfer application and sometimes they're separate. So that's something to look into and see if you need to submit different paperwork or applications Start looking and see what your options are, because a lot of those are due around the same time as your application. And start coming up with a plan for housing. Are you thinking about living on campus, off campus? Look at what all your options are, see how much housing is, and see what the application deadlines are if you plan to live on campus. If you're not planning to live on campus, how are you going to get to classes? Are you going to bring a car? How far do you have to drive? Do you have to pay for a parking permit? Some colleges, it's very expensive and not worth it, and some it's pretty affordable. So look and see how much a parking permit is. For example, if you are thinking of going to UW, almost 10 years ago, it was about $500 a quarter. So it's probably more than that now. It's a lot of money and probably not worth it. But there are lots of transportation options like buses and living close to campus. So look at what all your options are and see if a bus fee is, part of your tuition, so you don't have to pay for it, and just kind of understand your options. And if you're not planning to move, you're looking at attending online, make sure you actually apply to the online schools application. A lot of programs will have an in-person and an online option, and they might be totally different schools. For example, if you're applying to WSU, they have their global campus, which is a completely different thing. Sometimes they can easily transfer the applications over, but it's a lot easier if you just make sure you apply to the right online program first. The spring before you plan to transfer, so about 6 months before you plan to transfer, 3 to 6, you have to make some confirmations. A lot of schools will have a certain deadline where you have to accept their admission offer. And sometimes that comes with a deposit that you have to pay. Usually you have to register for orientation. Usually this tends to be toward the end of spring, early summer, but look and see what dates and deadlines when they start releasing that information. And once your degree is posted, you want to send those official transcripts from WVC. What I mean by posted is it shows up on your transcript. So that can take a little bit of time. It's not going to show up, immediately after you graduate, but check back and make sure that you are sending your official transcripts to those schools. And look over any financial aid award you've been given and accept or deny parts of it. Some schools automatically offer you loans without you asking, others don't. Wenatchee Valley College, for example, you have to apply for loans separately, but a lot of other schools will just throw it out there in that financial aid award. So if you don't want loans, make sure you're denying that part of your application and accepting other award, but accepting the other pieces. Also, make sure you are taking care of that housing. So pay any deposits you need to, sign leases, get on wait lists, come up with a plan. If you don't have one, make sure you know where you're going to be living. And if you're living on campus, make sure you are completing the application by whatever deadline they have. Even if you miss the deadline, I would still reach out and see if they'll accept it. You might have to select a first preference dorm or apartment or a list or select roommates, that kind of thing. So start looking into that as well. And apply for graduation here at Wenatchee Valley College. This is so important and so many students miss it. Even if you don't plan to attend the graduation ceremony, you still have to apply to actually get your degree. So just because you finished all the requirements doesn't mean you're going to get your associate's degree. You have to actually fill out paperwork to let the registration office know what degree you completed so they can look at it and make sure everything's, that you met all the requirements. So make sure you do that. And that's pretty critical. If you forget, they're pretty understanding and they'll try to catch up, but it'll really delay the process and you might not get it on your transcript for a while. So make sure you're paying attention to that deadline. So here's just a snapshot of some of the public schools in Washington and some of the important deadlines to keep in mind. I encourage you to look at your own information on their websites because occasionally things can change. Most of these tend to be pretty consistent each year, but you never know, they can move dates around sometimes. For example, some things to pay attention to, UW's FAFSA deadline is January 15th. But their actual application isn't due until February 15th. So January 15th, February 15th, it's a whole month difference. That's one of the reasons I recommend putting any school you're looking at on your FAFSA right away. Same thing with Western Washington University and WSU. WSU doesn't require you to submit a transfer application until July, but you need to have that FAFSA and scholarship in by January 31st, or else you might not get as much financial aid. So pay attention to all these different deadlines and dates, make sure you're meeting the requirements, and you can reach out to these institutions if you have questions too. So on an application, there are a few different things you might see. Every application is going to be different. Every school is going to be different, which makes it a little challenging. It means you're going to have to do some digging and research on your own to figure out what's required, or reaching out to admissions staff at that school to make sure you're meeting all these requirements. You will likely see things that ask about your background, your education history, what degree you're working on, what your GPA is right now, any classes that you're going to be working on before you transfer. So things in winter and spring quarter here. And they might ask for things like your social security number. They don't usually anymore, but that information might pop up too. They sometimes might ask you for a personal statement or essay. And this usually asks things about your goals, backgrounds, motivations. There's often some kind of prompt or question that they want you to answer. And then there's usually some kind of limitation, certain page limit, word limit, or something like that. A lot of students will shy away from applications that require this because it sounds like a lot of work. But schools that require a personal statement or essay are giving you an opportunity to show that you're more than just your transcript. You get an opportunity to talk about experiences in your life, or, if something happened and it caused some of your grades to dip, this is an opportunity for you to explain that. If you've spent a lot of time taking care of your siblings or other things in life, this is the chance for you to kind of highlight that strength and skill that you have, and show that you're more than just your grades. Schools will also ask you for some kind of transcript, sometimes from high school, sometimes they just want college. They might ask you for unofficial or official when you apply, but they will definitely want an official one when you graduate from WVC. So you might have to send 2 official transcripts. You might have to send one when you apply and then another one when you're done with your degree. And I bring that up because these do cost money. Usually it's not a whole lot. I believe it's between $10 and $15 for the most part, but that can add up. So keep that in mind if a school asks for it, that you will need to send it a couple of times. Some schools require test scores. This is not really a big thing for transfer students. So if you didn't take the SAT or ACT, most schools don't require it anymore, especially not for transfer. But if you're going into a specific program, sometimes they might require test scores. So look into that. This especially comes up in healthcare. So look if you are applying to kind of a more competitive program, or there are a few out there that want you to take a certain kind of test before you apply. So check that out, and you might have to submit scores for that. Some schools will require letters of recommendation, especially if you're going into a competitive program. Others will allow you to submit them, so they might say recommended or accepted. If you have people who can write you a strong letter, I highly recommend it. And there are a few schools that just won't take them. So don't send them if they don't take them, because that doesn't help your application. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these applications are going to charge a fee. These fees can really add up, especially if you're applying to multiple schools. So if you're eligible for a waiver, get that waiver signed. Again, if you're in TRIO or camp or something like that, let us know. Most programs in our state, especially the public schools, take our waivers. So don't pay for it if you don't need to. And importantly, some majors or programs require you to apply separately. It depends on the school. It depends on how competitive they are. Sometimes when you apply to the school as a transfer student, you'll automatically get into the major, but other times you have to complete a separate application either at the time that you're applying to the school or once you get there. So do some research and see what your school requires. For example, UW is one that jumps to mind. They usually require a different application. Some programs at WSU, more competitive programs like the dental hygiene program at Eastern, Nursing programs, things like that will probably require a separate application. After you apply, there's a few key things to do. Number one, stay on track here at Wenatchee Valley College. I was a transfer student too. I get the feeling like once you've applied, and especially once you've been accepted, it's hard to want to focus. But it's really important that you do. You want to keep those grades up and you want to make the most of your experience while you're here. Occasionally, schools can retract offers. If you fail out, you want to make sure that you're actually finishing the degree that you set out to complete. So don't lose sight of the fact that you're here working on your degree and finishing up. Apply for scholarships, like I mentioned. There's lots of opportunities out there. Some of them are at the school, but there are others out there too. So look around and see how you can pay for your education outside of standard financial aid. Follow up with any paperwork. So things like applying to graduate here at Wenatchee Valley College, sending those official transcripts, accepting offers, paying deposits, housing applications, all that stuff. Make sure you are looking to see what you need to be doing next. And if there's anything missing, reach out for support if you're not sure. But there should be some kind of follow-up at one point or another. And I've mentioned it before, I'll stress it again. Don't forget to apply for your degree here at Wenatchee Valley College. If you are completing a degree, it is possible to transfer without one. But, if you're here working on your associate's degree, you want to get that recognition and make sure that it goes with your transfer application. So this is a lot of info, and it can be really hard to keep track of it all. Which school requires what are the different deadlines? If you are a TRIO student, I have a separate workshop for you where we will go through a sheet and way to organize all this information. If you are not a TRIO student, I still recommend you come up with some kind of system for this. So along with this video, there is a packet of information, and in that packet, there are some suggestions on how to organize and compare schools, but come up with your own system, find ways to track this and compare so that you don't lose track of deadlines and the different requirements, especially if you're applying to a few different schools. Again, if you are not in the TRIO department and you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us. You can find our application and more about our program on our website, wvc.edu/TRIO. You can also stop by our office if you're on the Wenatchee campus. We're on the second floor of Michie Twy and 1221, and you can give us a call or email there as well. I hope that this video was helpful for you in giving you some general information about transferring. And we're here if you have questions or need support. So I wish you well on your transfer journey. And if you are a TRIO student, I'll see you soon.